It's Thursday, the 9th of December. My name's Juan Brown. You're watching the Blanco Lirio channel. Not a real good day for flying today, but a good day for learning. We got a little bit of frozen precipitation here at the global headquarters. More coming next week, hopefully to relieve us from this drought situation here in Northern California. Over the weekend, we had a couple of tragic light aircraft crashes that involved flying in IMC conditions or foggy conditions. We've talked at length on this channel about the different layers of safety that the Federal Aviation Regulations offer, from Part 91 to Part 135 to Part 121 airline style operations. When you get up to the Part 121 level of operations, one of the questions I get a lot on this channel is, are there very many of you airline pilots that fly small airplanes? And the answer is no, not a lot of us do. It's expensive, and most airline pilots figured that by the time they get to their Part 121 airline jobs, they've paid their dues. They know the risks involved with flying smaller aircraft. Now, I still enjoy flying small aircraft. It's what I've done all my life. But one thing I no longer do is I don't fly in bad weather at all anymore in the small airplanes. It's simply too risky. The layers of backup that I have come used to in the 121 world are simply not there in the FAR Part 91 world, and the best safety device may be one of these, and the answer, no, we're not going to go fly. A credit card, go get a hotel room, and wait until this weather improves. It's so sad to lose a friend, lose acquaintances, lose pillars of the society, of the community, in bad weather conditions, only to have their memorial service on a perfectly sunny, warm day. Before we go inside and review in detail the crash of the Piper Navajo in Medford, Oregon, let's review real quick, why is instrument flying so difficult for humans? We are simply not designed to fly. Our inner ear vestibular system relies on our eyes in order to maintain situational awareness with the horizon and your surrounding conditions. Folks that don't fly and or don't have a fundamental understanding of physics can't quite understand this. When you're standing here on the ground, you close your eyes. I can always tell which way is up and which way is down because I'm firmly planted here on the ground. In an airplane, some folks think, well, why don't you just hang a plumb bob and then you can always see which way is down, which way is up. That's not how an airplane works. An airplane flies and turns by banking. This results in a couple of different forces. You've got a vertical lift force counteracting gravity, and you've got a horizontal lifting force which allows the aircraft to turn, which has a resultant force that looks like this. The resultant force is out here. Centrifugal force throws these weights out. Centripetal force, by the way, is the tension on the string keeping the weights from flying off. And that resultant force on your human body feels to you like you are flying straight and level. That's the feel that you're going to get from your inner ears, as the hairs in your inner ears, which operate in that fluid, will, as you roll into the turn and stabilize in, say, a 30-degree bank turn, those inner ear hairs will level back out, giving you the sensation that you are flying straight and level. If you do not believe your gauges, visually, you got to look at the gauges. If you do not believe those gauges, and somebody tells you to do a command or do a turn, you may very well be thrown off completely. For example, if you roll into a right-hand turn and the controller tells you to continue your right-hand turn, you may think you're straight and level, and you may therefore rack up the aircraft even tighter and tighter, resulting in the classic graveyard spiral if you're not believing your instruments. Also, too, you may be in a right-hand turn. You see the instruments that you need to roll out. You go ahead and roll out. Now your inner ear is telling you that you are in a left bank turn because they haven't adjusted to your new flight profile, your inner ears that is. And so then you instead rack up the aircraft into an even steeper right-hand turn. Now in the 121 world, what do we do to counteract this? First, you've got 2 current and qualified instrument-rated pilots on board the aircraft, each one watching the other every move. Coupled with those 2 pilots, you have a very efficient autopilot that can fly the aircraft for you. Also, you have excellent instrumentation and a pretty magenta pink line to follow to always help you keep your situational awareness on board the aircraft. You also have a very rigid safety management system, including a thing called FOQA that monitors our every move in the aircraft. Anytime I step out of bounds on the airline and exceed any single limit, the aircraft will rat me out and I'll get a call, and there will be a discussion as to why I exceeded a particular limit on an airline. The bottom line is, when you know that you are being monitored, you behave differently. In the Part 91 world, you're on your own. And in a Part 91 operated flight of a light twin single pilot IFR at night in foggy conditions, that is one of the highest workload environments any pilot can be subjected to, especially giving a tricky instrument departure in mountainous terrain. Does that mean more regulation is the answer? No, but more quality training, AQP, Advanced Qualification Program style airline pilot type training in Part 91 in general aviation is certainly part of the equation, and being more keenly aware of your risk assessment and how badly the odds are stacked against you when to pull out this credit card and say, no, we're getting a hotel room instead. We're not going today. Let's go inside and take a closer look at this Medford situation. We'll start off with Catherine's report here. This occurred on Sunday, the 5th of December, Piper PA-31-350. That's the Navajo Chieftain model of Piper twin-engine aircraft. More on that in a moment. This occurred right about sunset, 4:50 local time. There's a video out there showing the final seconds, which I won't be playing here, but you've seen it. But it clearly shows loss of control of the aircraft, and it appears as if the aircraft is entirely in one piece prior to impact. In other words, all 4 corners of the aircraft will be located. It did not come apart in midair. We'll look at the flight radar 24 data. 2 fatalities. Now, this aircraft was flown from Fallon, the home base of the airport, and the folks involved, well-known folks from Fallon, Nevada. It was flown from Fallon up to Medford some 2 weeks prior on 24 November, and the aircraft remained there at the Medford airport during that time. The aircraft, I believe, was fueled up just before they took off from leaving Medford. Video provided to Newswatch 12 from 2 sources showed that the plane ultimately descended rapidly at a near vertical angle before slamming into the parking lot. But one of the videos also shows the plane prior to the crash apparently fighting to gain altitude, swooping down into the frame, pulling back up, remaining out of the frame for several long seconds, then reappearing in the straight down portion of the crash video, which we've already seen. So we'll be able to look at that data on Flight Radar 24 as well. Here's the data from Flight Radar 24, departing runway 14, generally to the south, starting the right-hand turn as part of the standard instrument departure procedure for that runway, which we'll look at in a minute, and then losing control right here in the turn. If we back this up and play it out, he's climbing and accelerating, doing fine right about up into here. Then the climb rate slows down and begins descending in the right-hand turn. And then begins ascending, a very steep ascent. very low to the ground. 1,700 foot GPS altitude. The field elevation at Medford, we'll take a look at that in a second, 1,300 feet, very close to the ground. And then loses control of the aircraft altogether. To me, this indicates what I believe to be an accelerated stall following spatial disorientation. An accelerated stall is when you stall the aircraft in a steep turn or in a maneuver. As you know, as you increase bank angle, you increase your stall speed. Over here in the speed and altitude graph, we can see he's climbing out normally, and then right about here, he begins to lose control of the aircraft. At 1,600 feet, not very far off the ground, what is that, some 300 feet or so off the ground, his ground speed, 125 knots, then he begins descending, and the airspeed shoots up, big reversal. Then he begins climbing, and the airspeed descends rapidly. And then I believe that's the complete loss of control of the aircraft. I believe once he began to lose control of the aircraft, he then created his own accelerated stall of the aircraft, which concluded in the final stall spin that we saw on the video. Or you can see on the video. I'll put it on the links below. This is Medford Airport, located in Southern Oregon, just over the Northern California border. Interstate 5 runs right through here, and as you can see, it's located in the Rogue Valley here, surrounded by very high terrain. There's Mount Ashland right there, 7,200 feet just to the south of the airport. So you have to climb in such a manner as to clear the terrain to get up safely into the IFR structure, clear of the terrain. Here's the standard instrument departure that he was cleared to fly, the Brute 7 departure to Lanks from runway 14. Top altitude, 11,000 feet. Takeoff minimums, runway 14. Standard with a minimum climb of 460 feet per nautical mile to 6,000 feet. That brings up another point. This is a climb gradient. What are you going to do if in the event you lose an engine on your twin engine departure? Can you make that 460 foot per nautical mile climb gradient on one engine? Probably not. What's going to be your single engine procedure? Regardless, this requires a right-hand turn pretty much right after takeoff to an NDB. Who's ever navigated off of an NDB in the recent past? MEF. You better have that already programmed into your GPS if you don't have that NDB still on the aircraft. It's basically a right-hand 270-degree turn back over the approach end of the runway and then out to Brute, this waypoint here, and then a right turn out to Lanks where you got to be at least at or above 8,000 feet. And now you can get safely up into the IFR structure, clear of all of the terrain. Now, when do you make this right-hand turn? This departure doesn't give you a pretty magenta line to follow. You use your standard instrument departure plan or procedure of climb straight ahead to 400 feet before beginning a turn, get everything squared away at 400 feet, and then begin your right-hand turn to start your procedure. Quick review of your standard weather minimums on a bold method here. Remember, the weather for this particular situation was 3 miles and mist, 200 overcast. And your standard takeoff minimums, 1 or 2 engine, 1 statute mile, if you're flying a SID. Remember, too, in Part 91, you could technically take off in 0-0 if you wanted to. Not recommended. But because you're flying this SID, this minimum takeoff weather minimum applies. A quick review of the FAA handbook on the chapter on departure procedures. You need to understand how these procedures are designed and built in order to understand how to fly them. And if you scroll on down here, and we just spend years studying this from the military all the way through the airlines and continuously reviewing the training on these procedures. Here on page 16, it explains that you need to, the standard procedure, unless specified otherwise, required obstacle clearance for all departures, including diverse departures, based on the pilot crossing the departure end of the runway, DER, at 35 feet above the end of the runway elevation, and then climbing to 400 feet above the departure end of the runway elevation before making the initial turn and maintaining a minimum climb gradient of 200 feet per nautical mile, and unless required to fly a level off or crossing restriction, or if there's other minimums that apply, which there are in this case because of the surrounding terrain. Now let's go over here to visit Victor at VAS Aviation. Again, thank you, Victor, for getting this all together so very well in this presentation. Highly recommend you support Victor's channel, VAS Aviation. Here again is the weather. No wind, 3 miles, mist, overcast at 200 feet. That is legal takeoff weather minimums for this departure. Besides what are you going to do in the event of an emergency if you lose an engine for climbing out of there and avoiding the obstacles? What are you going to do, or where are you going to go to come back to in the event of an emergency? You're right down to the minimums for the ILS return to this particular airport. Or do you want to try and climb out and go somewhere else out of these mountains?
Medford ground, Navajo 64 Bravo Romeo, with information uniform at Jet Center. I'd like to pick up our IFR departure.
That's the IFR flight plan back to Fallon.
Navajo 64 Bravo Romeo, Medford ground. Cleared to the Foxtrot Lima X-ray Airport via
Fallon.
the Brute 7 departure. Length transition, then as filed. Climb and maintain 1000. Expect 15,000 5 minutes after departure. Departure frequency 124.3. Squawk 6677.
This controller is fantastic. He is very slow and deliberate. You will not get this kind of service at busy airports like New York or Chicago. This controller is doing a fantastic job here.
Roger. The departure is a Route 7 or a Brute 7? B as in Bravo.
Navajo 4 Bravo Romeo, Brute 7, Bravo Romeo, Uniform, Tango, Echo, with the lengths transition.
There's only one SID for runway 14, the Brute 7 departure. He should know this already. You've got to have this all squared away in your mind long before you get to this point.
Please give me the phonetic for the transition.
Thanks.
Navajo 4 Bravo Romeo, Lima, Alpha, November, Kilo, Sierra.
Roger. Length transition. Climb maintain 11,000. Expect 15,000 within 5 minutes. Departure freak is 124.3, and the squawk is 6677 for 64 Bravo Romeo.
You can begin to get an idea of all the complicated issues this pilot is beginning to face on this departure on his own.
Navajo 64 Bravo Romeo, read back correct.
At Medford ground, Navajo 64 Bravo Romeo at Jet Center. We're ready to taxi for departure on 14.
Navajo 64 Bravo Romeo, Medford ground, runway 14, taxi via Alpha.
14 taxi via Alpha for 64 Bravo Romeo.
Navajo 64 Bravo Romeo, advise tower when ready for departure.
Roger, we'll advise when ready for departure. I'm going to do a run-up down there, 64 Bravo Romeo.
Bedford Tower, Skywest 3937, ILS 14.
Skywest 3937, Medford Tower, runway 14, clear to land.
Clear to land 14, Skywest 3937.
Tops reported 2,500, bases at minimums.
Medford Tower, Navajo 64 Bravo Romeo is first up and ready to go at Alpha 6 for runway 14 departure.
Navajo 64 Bravo Romeo, Medford Tower, hold short, runway 14, landing traffic.
the SkyWest aircraft has to land on runway 14. Check out the observation that the SkyWest has about the weather.
Roger, and I have the traffic on final, 64 Bravo Romeo.
It's too foggy. Can't see.
Bravo 64 Bravo Romeo, read back, hold short instructions with call sign, please.
Roger, hold short for 64 Bravo Romeo.
SkyWest 3937, turn right Alpha 3, taxi the terminal via taxiway Alpha, monitor ground point 8. Good evening.
All right, Alpha 3, Alpha to the terminal, point 8, Sky 3937, and that was right at minimum.
It was 3937, Roger, thank you.
That means he broke out right at a half mile or 200 feet. I believe it's the ceiling. The visibility is the controlling minimum on that instrument approach. However, he's not going to see that the end of the runway or the lights at the end of the runway until 200 feet above the ground. So it's right at minimum. So that's telling you that this weather is not good for the departure. Also, good catch by the controller to require Bravo Romeo to read back the entire hold short clearance precisely because it's foggy. He's got to know to hold short for this landing traffic.
Navajo 64 Bravo Romeo, Medford Tower, runway 14, clear for takeoff, Brute 7 departure.
Roger, 64 Bravo Romeo, cleared for departure, Brute 7 departure, 64 Bravo Romeo, 14.
Kind of slow on the read back, but that's...
Medford Tower, 64 Bravo Romeo is off. Will you be calling my turn for the Brute 7?
No, hold it right there, right there. That just, to me, that just says everything right there, that this pilot is not prepared for this standard instrument departure, and it's much too late now to get this sorted out. No, you do the standard thing. You climb out straight ahead to 400 feet, and then you begin to fly the procedure, the right-hand turn.
Navajo 64 Bravo Romeo, negative, just fly the SID as published.
Climb right turn, and you got to know that...
Navajo 64 Bravo Romeo, you're going to make a right turn, climbing, and overfly the NDB or the approach end of runway 14, which of course you can't see. So it's the NDB, using the NDB or your GPS, and then proceed to Brute intersection, and then proceed to Links, and then on course.
Roger, 64 Bravo Romeo.
He basically described the entire SID to the pilot, but the pilot right now, he's 200 feet. He's rotating, poof, he's up into the soup in a matter of seconds. He's got his hands full, helmet fire. You can hear it in his voice. That means he's just becoming task saturated, overwhelmed.
Low altitude alert. Navajo 64 Bravo Romeo, check your altitude immediately. Bedford altimeter 3039er, your altitude indicates 1,700.
Remember, Medford about 1,300 feet, only about 400 feet above
Navajo
the ground.
64 Bravo Romeo, are you on top?
And the fog was quite thick.
Navajo 64 Bravo Romeo, Medford Tower, how do you hear? Truck 80, Medford Tower. The aircraft appears to have crashed over by the Subaru Chevron dealer, approximately 1 mile from the airport due south. Truck 80, it was a Navajo, PA-31. As far as I know, there was only one person on board, but I can't verify that.
So the NTSB will need to comb through what's left of the wreckage and determine the condition of the engines, ensure that both engines were operating normally, or was there some kind of a problem with the engines. There was no distress call from the pilot regarding any kind of mechanical malfunctions. And then there was the loss of the Beechcraft Bonanza near Visalia, in Visalia, California, about the same time. This was a VFR takeoff at night into IMC conditions. That particular aircraft, with the whole family on board, never got higher than a couple hundred feet on departure before doing what appears to be a controlled flight into terrain just off the departure end of the runway. Both of these accidents being tragic reminders of just how careful you need to be when operating this time of year in low visibility conditions, how well prepared you need to be, and how well trained you need to be for dealing with these sort of conditions. Thanks so much for your support of this channel, especially over on Patreon, that make this content possible. See you here.